Well, if snooping was the big drama that played out today, data leak hasn't been far behind. In what is being called India's most extensive data breach, the personal information of 81.5 crore citizens is now allegedly available for sale on the dark web. American cybersecurity firm Resecurity Hunter, in its latest report, states that data believed to be from the Indian Council of Medical Research, or the ICMR, has been leaked. According to Resecurity, a threat actor, or the hacker in this case, operating under the alias PWN001, has put out the data of Indians on a platform called Breach Forums. 81.5 crore Indians means approximately 10 times the population of countries like Iran, Turkey and Germany, which are, by the way, the 17th, 18th and 19th most populous nations globally. Now, the leaked information includes Aadhaar and passport details, names, phone numbers, as well as addresses. PWN001 also claims that this data was extracted from the COVID-19 test records of citizens registered with the ICMR. And as evidence, the hacker has posted spreadsheets containing fragments of Aadhaar data, which were subsequently confirmed as valid Aadhaar card IDs. While there has been no official response from the ICMR yet or the government, the report suggests that the Central Bureau of Investigation, in all likelihood, will investigate this matter. So to talk more on this, I am first joined on the broadcast by the CEO of Resecurity, the American cybersecurity and intelligence agency that has reported this leak. Gene Yoo joins me on the broadcast tonight. Mr. Yoo, good evening. Welcome to Mirror Now. Thank you so much for speaking with us. First of all, it is your report that suggests that 81.5 crore citizens' data has been leaked, which was registered during the time of COVID with the ICMR. Could you help us understand in detail the findings of this report?
Thank you for allowing me to join here. I think it's important to note that, part of our business is always continuously looking at all of these activities, whether it's dark web or deep web, regardless of the connotation. I mean, a lot of these activities happen mainly because by criminal enterprises or organized crimes where they want to collect this information for other nefarious acts. And what we do as an organization, our Hunter unit, is responsible for continually monitoring these various open or closed sources or sites to better understand what's going on, to understand their tool, tactics, and practices or processes in order to collect this information on behalf of our clients and really to identify precursor to an event before it happens. But obviously, when we discover this information through our continuous learning exercises as well as collection exercises, we've identified these information, and we wanted to make sure that people are aware. Because I think what's happening is, hygienically, we have a lot of issues, organizational, national, or globally, where organizations are constantly in basically a battle to patch, harden in their environment while they're trying to grow the organizations. And what we do see is that because of these kind of the speed and the agility of how business is growing, oftentimes we see security organization sometimes falling behind, not because they're not willing to, just because lack of time, resource, and money. And because of all the cloud-enabled and digitizations that we're actually going through, I think the identity of every individual's, not just in India, but globally, are being, pilfered by various criminal syndicates for fraudulent activities and what have you. And again, this is a thing that we do as an organization, that we do continuously in monitoring what's going on around the world.
Gene, this, I believe, happened on the 9th of October. And correct me if I'm wrong here. This is when we got to know that such a breach allegedly has happened. But since then till now, what is the time frame we're looking at in terms of How much more data can be misused or put on the dark net for sale, as your report suggests?
I think that that's the keynote. I mean, that when the information was posted, it's not necessarily when the event actually took place. It could have been, months or years until they collected the information and used many times over before it actually gets used. The, from a, as a, I think one of the educational moment we need to remember is that when you see stuff and people hear about dark web and deep web and all these things, keep in mind that information when it's public, basically. I know people like to think it's like some closed, secret places, but it's not. And when it's posted, that means that it's actually a tertiary market, if not a secondary market. Usually when the initial access has been acquired and the data has been exfiltrated or data has been stolen, many of these actors, organizations are going to use that for other nefarious activities, as I mentioned before, and it could be for fraud and everything else. So, like, it's kind of like you stole it first, and I'm going to use it as much as I can before I resell it again, and that's when it actually goes onto the market. But to your point, we haven't determined the length of it, right? But I mean, if you think about COVID data points, right? I mean, we're talking about almost 2 years ago, right? When people were collecting all this information. From then till now, how that all those information can be used with all the PI that's contained in it. I mean, it's almost like a free treasure trove, right? And now it's publicly available, basically, and now people could actually acquire for a number of different reasons.
Gene, now that you've come out with this report, your agency has, what is the next step? Is that where your role ends, or do you also assist governments in taking this forward, in resolving this, in taking it to its, last end? If, for example, the government of India does require your help, would you be there to assist them to take it till the last end as to who this hacker is, what exactly happened, the whole process?
The the short answer is, of course, we would love to help any government agencies and organization in the flight of what everything that's going on. Typically when we do a lot of these information sharing or when we reach out to people about potential breach, we're not trying to, provide, action, we're trying to do our best as a good citizens and as a company, letting people aware of what's happening. Because this is what we do day in, day out. So a lot of times when we monitor things for our clients, sometimes we see a cross-reference to, let's say, government agencies or healthcare. And that's when we try to work with law enforcement and government agencies to notify them of what the activities are so that they could take action on it. For most part, we all like to think that, this isn't like some secret squirrel, James Bond stuff where we get to go after the bunch of kids on the keyboard. That's just not how it works. The reality is this, the Pone 0001, all these actors and individuals, they have other interests. And, for us to identify this person is not really the patient zero per se. What we wanted to do is provide, I think the key thing is that it's a lesson learned to identify like who originally went after it. I mean, we could go back to some of the defects or misconfiguration that led to this thing, because it may have just been a open door that nobody saw and then information was extracted and then they've been harvesting it for, a long time. The lesson learned really from this is really to focus on identity is something that I think we all need to really think about, because your emails, your mobile numbers are basically keys to every kingdom, from financial institution to your work and everything else. And knowing these type of activity happens, I think the key messaging is to really look at your hygienic things, right? Like harden, patch, make sure your identity is protected, monitor where it's possible. But I think we're seeing a global kind of explosion of identity thefts growing at scale because we allowed our data to be shared, available, and all of us are used to just, signing up to a site and then, putting our email address and sharing the same password. So identifying those events from happening and bringing bringing almost what we do in the business actually down to the consumer level and providing this identity protection, I think is the kind of the key thing that we need to start focusing on, because this is going to happen over and over again. We call it the infinity game, where it's not about winning or losing, because it's not a win. It's a win. It's not a win-win battle. There's always going to be criminals. There's always going to be good guys, and always going to be a bad guys. So we're just trying to meet the halfway to reduce the damage as much as possible.
And therefore, Gene, since this is such an infinite game, as you suggest, and in the vast world of internet, there are thousands of things that are unregulated. We still need regulation for a lot of things on internet. We need laws on that. But till then, have you also had other experiences in other countries where such data leaks have been happening, and how have they really dealt with it?
Well, there are many public breaches that I think people may be aware of. And more, every country, from even countries from Africa to Latin America, we're all moving toward this e-government initiative. And e-government means e-passport, everything is electronic. And to get to that holy grail of all the access is your identity. And, the problem is I think a lot of times, government infrastructures are very monolithic, and it's a human. I mean, if you think about the size and the scale of a country and managing the entire population, it is very complex. I mean, it's not a simple task to do, and I applaud for every government trying to do it, but I think there's two parts to it. The e-government and the digitization is never going to stop. It's going to grow faster. And then what we need to do is, knowing that, how do we prevent these types of activities from happening? And then there are fundamental things that we could do, which is, the old way of making sure everything's patch hardened and you have the right security control, right people in place to do the monitoring. And then the other side is, how do we provide or bring a way for individual consumers to start protecting themselves? And this is what I'm talking about. This is globally, because I think email is becoming an identity, and it's the single thing that we all carry with us everywhere in the world. I think it surpasses mobile devices, because at the end of the day, how many emails all of us do have, truly actually have, right?
Yeah. All right. Gene Yoo, thank you very much for speaking with Mirror Now and helping us understand a bit better what the situation might be and how India can take this forward and resolve it further. Thank you very much, Gene Yoo, for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much for this opportunity.
And with that, let me also shift my focus to the other panelists on the show who will be helping us better understand this situation as well. N.S. Napinai, advocate and founder, Cybersathi, joins us. Kishore Subramanian, financial expert, also joins us. And Dr. Sanjeev Bagai, chairperson, Nephron, joins us. Let me first start with you, Dr. Sanjeev Bagai. We're talking about data at the ICMR, which was registered during COVID times. Could you help us understand what's the kind of personal details we're looking at? We all remember what all we filled in online when we were registering during COVID times in various apps, on various websites. But in terms of ICMR, at an organization such as this, what's the kind of data that is recorded and registered and stored?
Good evening. I think this is a very disturbing and a worrying news. Perhaps it could be the worst nightmare for any organization or any government. There are various key elements when we fill in these kind of large-scale data across the board in a very short period of time. It involves confidentiality, integrity, availability, accessibility. Of course, there is data analytics. But more important is storage of the data, and going forward with regards ring fencing and what we call as cyber security. The data can be huge. It is involving the medical diseases, it is the diagnosis, it is the age, it's the phone number, it's linked with the Aadhaar card, your financial details, your bank details. This could also involve a lot of fraud insurance claims or indeed insurance frauds, financial frauds. The health data will also include things like they can hack their passwords and their personal IDs, including the passports and the Aadhaar card. So I think this is unauthorized access. It's a disclosure of unforeseen magnitude. It's just a simple word as theft. Acquisition of data which can be used for repeat offenders. So it's not a one-off. It can be used again and again. Now it's in public domain apparently. So I think it's of utmost importance that the best IT team and the law enforcement team puts the head together to find out whether it's an insider job or it's an outsider job. But clearly this is being done for ulterior motive, for financial gain, or indeed espionage, or someone from overseas trying to harm the nation. So I think we need to put our heads together. But the data is huge. The amount of data points in terms of line items are numerous, and the implications can have a ripple effect across all sections of Indian society. Mind you, 80, 81, 82 crores out of a population of 144 odd is almost 56, 57% of the Indian population data, which is available in public domain. That's the concern.
And that's the concern. And of course, the concern arising out of this concern is, Kishore Subramanian, the frauds that come along with it. The cyber frauds, the financial frauds, the risks that we're all at when our personal data is leaked. In this situation, Kishore Subramanian, what are we looking at? What are the kind of risks we are at when our personal data is leaked?
The first point that I would like to say is that this is a huge data breach. No doubts and no two ways about that. But what is important to understand is that this is not the first time. And as the CEO of the Race Security said, this is an infinity game. So this is not going to be the first time. This is not going to be the last time. Now, coming to your question pointed with regards to financial frauds that can happen with regards to this, my personal opinion is the chances are very, very, very low. And let me explain you why the chances are low. Now, the data that has been captured or stolen or hacked by the hackers PWN001 are basically name, Aadhaar number, passport, maybe some date of birth, say maybe which vaccine the person took, and beyond that he wouldn't take. Now, as far as the data security layer in financial transactions are concerned, I run a financial firm, so I understand that there is an SSL level of security everywhere. For example, if you do a banking transaction, there is an OTP. If you do a financial insurance transaction or a security thing, there is an OTP. Everywhere there are data layers. Now, yes, with this data, they may find a lot of gullible people who may end up believing, see, for example, if I have your Aadhaar number and I exactly know your date of birth, I can create a false Aadhaar card. Now, with that false Aadhaar card, how much will I be able to access your finance or maybe purchase something on your name? It's going to be very difficult. For example, I need credit card, I need net banking, I need transactions. Now, if you look at financial fraud, there are only three ways you can take money. One is the bank, one is the UPI, one is the credit or the debit cards. Now, all the threes are protected by multiple layers. So it's going to be very difficult. But as the other gentleman, the panelist said, I do agree that whether there's espionage, if there are going to be data sold and this is going to be used for wrong voting or anything, I'm just hyper sensitizing it and saying it that it can be used for multiple things. But financial frauds, I find it a little far-fetched. But yes, that doesn't mean the data is open for leak and stealing. This has to be investigated by CBI. I definitely think we have to harden our systems at places where there are bulk data. For example, ICMR or any place where, the nation pollutes its data with regards to national activities, which can be your voter ID, your database for voting. It could be your Aadhaar database, ICMR, vaccine, hospitals, where we are polluting in large numbers. Financial frauds, I find it far-fetched because last time when AIMS data also was stolen, it was a big hangama, but nothing happened. But believe me, last point, and give me about 30 seconds over here. The last point that I would like to add is, financial frauds which are happening by cheating gullible people. If you would have seen this documentary Noose in New York Tuck, it's about 20,000 cases registered under RBI every single day. And we are cheating about the people, the fraudsters are cheating about 45,000 Americans offshore, not to add the other country people. So data theft is not the only source. Data theft cannot be the be all and end all to make financial, to have financial windfalls and gains. What is important is people need to maintain 3 rules and they'll be safe. Do not click on unauthorized links. Do not share OTP, password, CBV. Third, do not subscribe to websites or places where you are not aware of. And do not call unknown numbers, but just call the call centers whenever you have clarifications. Or better, go directly. Do not save your passwords on mobile and other gadgets. That's my take on this, and I don't think so it's going to be
what also leaves us a bit unaware, Kishore, and a bit helpless here is the fact that how do we know which is an unauthorized link and which is not an authorized link? Not everybody has that awareness. And that's where the catch is. That's what the fraudsters are exploiting. Data theft is perhaps not the biggest source through which financial frauds are being carried out, but it is one of the source, and therefore it is a concern as well. I want to take this across to NS Napinai. NS Napinai, all of us, of course, would agree that this is one of the biggest data leaks, and this needs to be probed well till the very end. But I also want to understand from you, and something that all of us would also have an opinion on, whether the concept of privacy actually exists online. Because we do talk about privacy and our data being leaked, and every time there's an AIMS data breach or an ICMR data breach, we hold our heads together and we're discussing it and we're thinking about it. But the point of the matter is, here's my phone, it has Google in it, it has all the social media apps, the phone is listening to everything, Google is popping up ads as per my conversations in real life. Where is the privacy? Who's talking about, the actual privacy? I don't think there does exist online privacy at all.
Not at all. It doesn't. And you are absolutely right. But then you also pointed out another important aspect, which is that we are all speaking about it, and that's happening finally. How many of us were aware of our privacy right before all this happened, before COVID, for instance? And I would say before the Puttaswamy judgment. So from then to now, if we are speaking about privacy, if we have understood that as a fundamental right, if we are that bit more cautious, I would say that that's progress which is good to keep ahead of. That's one aspect. There are 2 points I wanted to make on this issue primarily. The first of it with respect to the data breach, and the second one, the question that you asked earlier about financial frauds. So the first and foremost is, we are in this kind of a Trishanku, I wouldn't even call it Swarga, in that Trishanku place, where we had very minimalist provisions under the Information Technology Act. Those have been repealed by the Digital Personal Data Protection Act. And we are still awaiting the DPDP to come into effect. And in the meantime, we are seeing these kind of data breaches. If you look at the Puttaswamy judgment and what were the lessons we learned from it, it was very simple. Acquire data where it is necessary. Do not retain data when it no longer serves its purpose. Because, if you look at this, if you look at the trend that's been happening over time, people seem to have assumed that data truly is gold and they have been hoarding it. And they don't know when to let go. And they don't realize that it causes harm then. The more you hold on, the more data sets or data information which can be triangulated, etc., to get a lot more information about a person is held on, the more you're putting that person to jeopardy. So when such personal data as health data is being retained, it continues to be sensitive personal data. It continues to have a higher threshold and has to be protected better. It cannot be subject to this kind of a data breach. And very quickly on the financial frauds front, I beg to differ from the panelists on the limited front that yes, by itself a data breach may not cause harm, but it adds to the harm for the simple reason if you look at the mode and manner in which financial frauds are conducted, even without a data breach, a fraudster is able to access your bank accounts irrespective of the multi-factor authentication, irrespective of the OTP that you receive, even when you don't share the OTP. A classic example is a SIM swap case, right? So we can't assume that the data breach is not relevant when it comes to frauds. We have to be mindful of the fact that a fraudster now has that many more data sets than they had before the breach. And a breach, any cybercrime costs money. It's not only for the victims that there is a money drain, but even for the criminal, the crime has to have a payback. So if this data breach is happening, then there is a cause and effect to it, and there is a purpose behind it. And you're already seeing it. If this
And
data has been
therefore,
on the
NS
document,
Napinai,
offered as
what
a
is the
crime
law
as
regulating it? In India, we don't have a particular law. We have the data protection law. It has to be implemented. But otherwise, there is no specific strict law that regulates this kind of a situation, this kind of a problem.
No, not quite true, because you still have the other provisions of the Information Technology Act, which penalizes, criminalizes the act of hacking, the act of data theft, the act of release of such data. So you do have enough provisions, especially under the Information Technology Act. And that which is not covered under the Information Technology Act will still come under the general law, which is the Indian Penal Code. What we lack are not laws. What we lack are effective implementation of those laws, enforcement. We need to have stronger enforcement. We need to show that these laws do work and they can be, drawn upon to apprehend a
What stops
criminal
us
and
from
to bring them to.
implementing them fully and completely, NS Napinai? If we have the laws, if we have the regulation, what is stopping us?
That is my question too. What is stopping us? We need to have systems which work to speed in the current scenario. Today, we cannot afford to have 10 and 20-year long drawn litigation processes. We have to relook and rethink our processes. So you now have even the general laws being replaced. You have the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita and the BNSS, etc. So the Penal Code, the Evidence Act, and the Criminal Procedure Code are being replaced. But if you look at the provisions, a lot of issues which we have already faced as stumbling blocks are still being retained. So my earnest request here would be that when we are going to redo these general laws, we need to make sure that laws will work at the speed of technology, at warp speed, and be able to show that they are effective. Unless we can do that, it's just going to be a few more provisions added onto paper, and it's not going to make any bit of difference in terms of our individual rights or their protections.
Okay, let me take this across to Dr. Sanjeev Bagai. Dr. Bagai, Kishore Subramanian suggested the fact that when so much of data is collected at one place, especially in organizations like the ICMR and the AIMS, we need to segregate it. We need to have a proper, value attached to it and registered in forms of segments. Would that help? Would that be a more organized way of taking this forward and dealing with such a problem?
This is an important point. So I think there are two issues to this. One is with regards ring fencing and making the data more secure. I think a more public awareness campaign needs to be actually embarked on, so that common people know what cybercrime is. Let me be absolutely clear. This, what we are seeing as the ICMR data leak or hacking or being sold and resold repeatedly, is perhaps the mother of all crimes. I mean, cybercrime would be a small infant in comparison to the volume of data. Data is the new gold. And the second thing, the worrying thing is, in healthcare especially, we have everything based on data. The history, the diagnosis, the comorbidities, the insurance claims, the PAN numbers, your Aadhaar card, your each and every bit of paperwork is actually with the hospital records. Now, if that starts getting leaked or hacked, then it creates a huge problem, mainly for the patient and also for the insurance companies. So I think this is a wake-up call. I think we need more public awareness. I think the Indian law enforcement agencies should come down very heavily. I'm pretty much sure they will get to the bottom of it. However smart a criminal may be, but law catches up with them. But I think it's a wake-up call for the entire nation.
Okay. We'll have to see what comes out of that. I'm afraid I'll have to wrap this up due to paucity of time. But thank you to all my panelists, N.S. Napinai, Dr. Sanjeev Bagai and Kishore Subramaniam for joining us tonight and sharing your perspective on this big alleged data breach that has happened from the Indian Council of Medical Research. With that, we're slipping into a short break on Beyond the Headline. News and updates will continue on the other side. Stay tuned to Mirror Now.